Hi, Robert McClellan here with another quick video for students in ES101 at Wilfrid Laurier University. This one's a short introduction to the fifth lab in the course, in which we talk about pipelines and look at them as an example of how we often need to make decisions that involve trade-offs between economic development and environmental risks when we are developing our natural resources here in Canada. When you think about oil pipelines, Waterloo County doesn't necessarily spring to mind. But in fact, we have a very significant oil pipeline here in the county. It crosses just the Grand River just south of Cambridge, and it's called Line 9. It connects Sarnia, Ontario to Montreal. And it was built back in the 1970s as a means of transporting oil from Western Canada to refineries in Montreal and Eastern Canada. It's been operating now for quite a number of decades. But a significant change was made after the 1970s. What happened was that the price of imported crude oil started to come down and made it much cheaper to refine than oil that was produced in Western Canada. So 20 plus years ago, the direction of flow in the pipeline was changed. And today, the pipeline actually carries oil that is imported from overseas and delivered by tanker to ports on the east coast of North America, and it transports that oil to Sarnia for refining. The operator of the pipeline, Enbridge, would like to reverse the flow of the pipeline yet again. It wants to be able to transport oil and tar sands product from Western Canada to Montreal and refineries in the east via Line 9. And this proposal has generated a lot of opposition here in Ontario for a number of reasons. And that's what this lab is about, is to get you to explore some of the controversies and issues and interests that are at stake with respect to Line 9. A little bit of geography about the North American oil industry will help you better understand what's going on with respect to Line 9. Now, most of the oil and gas that's produced in North America, this takes place out on the Great Plains and north of the Great Plains in the tar sands area of northern Alberta. The pipeline infrastructure that connects the producing areas to the refineries runs primarily on a north-south axis, so that in other words, much of the production that takes place in Alberta and Saskatchewan is transported south to the United States, to refineries in the Midwest and down towards Oklahoma and Texas. There are actually very few pipelines that connect the western part of North America to the eastern part of North America. That's where Line 9 comes in. By connecting to Sarnia, Line 9 actually is one of the few ways by which the North American oil grid, if you will, the oil pipeline grid, can connect on an east-west axis. At the present moment, there's a bit of a glut in oil production in western North America. This is for two reasons. One is that there's been a massive expansion in the amount of material being taken out of the Alberta Tar Sands. The other reason is that new technologies called hydraulic fracturing or fracking technologies have allowed oil companies to extract ever more amounts of oil from existing geology. And so what that means is that there's a lot of oil from not just Alberta but also the Dakotas, southern Saskatchewan and other places that is going into the pipeline system and being transported to refineries. What that means is that many of the refineries and many of the pipelines are operating at capacity. So to further expand production in Western Canada, in particular to expand further the production from the tar sands, the oil companies need to find new ways of getting their product to refineries that are beyond their existing pipeline network. There's two ways they can do this. One is to build new pipelines, and several of these are being proposed at the present time. Two of the more famous ones being the Northern Gateway project, which is a pipeline that is proposed to link Alberta to the coast of British Columbia so that oil can be transported from there onwards to Asian markets. The other one is something called the Keystone XL pipeline, which would add extra capacity to transport oil from southern Alberta to refineries in the United States. Now, neither Keystone XL nor the Northern Gateway has actually been built. Both of them are in the midst of environmental hearings, and they're running into a lot of resistance from environmental groups, from landowners and others who are concerned about the expansion of the pipeline network and the potential environmental impacts of it. Where Line 9 fits into the picture is that Line 9 already exists. And so what needs to be done there is not to construct new pipeline capacity, but simply to modify the existing pipeline and to reverse the direction of flow. And in doing so, what that would do is allow the oil sands companies and the energy companies in Western Canada to send more product to Eastern Canada than is presently possible. In the meantime, what the oil companies have been doing has been to send product by rail, and increasingly, year after year, there's more and more oil and other fossil fuel product being transported by rail here in North America. Now, rail is not the most efficient way of transporting oil. It's also not the safest way. There have been a number of derailment events in recent years, and earlier in 2013, there was a massive explosion in Lac Mégantic, Quebec, when a train bearing a shipment of oil bound from North Dakota to St. John, New Brunswick, got out of control and smashed into the downtown core of that community, causing an enormous explosion and fireball, killing 60 people and destroying much of the downtown core of Lac Mégantic. So there's a lot of concerns about shipping more and more oil and other explosive products by rail. However, it will be a number of years before more pipelines come online, and so this adds to the pressure to change the flow of Line 9 so that more oil can be brought from Western Canada to Eastern Canada. Now, there's some things that we need to keep in mind with respect to what would be flowing within Line 9. Right now, Line 9 is carrying light sweet crude oil that is imported from overseas. This is a very high quality product that's very easy to refine into oil, into motor oil, into gasoline and other products. What comes out of the tar sands is something different. It's known in the industry as dilbit, or diluted bitumen. What it is a mix of tar and kind of like the stuff you would pave your road with or pave your driveway with, a mixture of tar and petroleum distillates that are made out of natural gas. Now, these distillates or condensates, what they're used to do is to make that tar more viscous, more liquidy, so that it's easier to push it through a pipeline. Now, many of these distillates actually contain harmful chemicals or toxic materials in them. There are concerns that this product may be more corrosive or may cause the materials that the pipeline is made out of to break down faster than higher quality crude oil would do. Now, it's not clear from the evidence that's available publicly whether that's a valid concern or not. Enbridge and the oil companies insist that it's not an issue, but many environmental groups believe that it very well could be. The second issue is that this product, this dilbit product, is much more difficult to manage if there's an accident. For example, in the year 2010, one of the pipelines crossing Michigan, the state of Michigan, a pipeline operated by Enbridge Corporation, sprung a leak, and millions of liters of this dilbit was spilled into the Kalamazoo River. And although that was in 2010, they're still trying to clean up this material from the bed of the river. So it's a much more difficult product to manage if it escapes and gets out into the environment. And so, as with railways, pipelines also have accidents and spills that we need to manage as well. Many of the concerns about the reversal of Line 9 therefore revolve around the fact that Enbridge would be shipping tar sands product, or dilbit, from west to east across Ontario. Now, Line 9 crosses many important watersheds, not just the Grand River, and it also even intersects with the Toronto TTC subway network. So it's crossing a very densely populated area in order to bring oil and tar sands product to Montreal. So one of the questions that comes out of this is who actually benefits and who bears the risks if there is a problem with the pipeline. And so that's one of the things that you're going to get into when one of the issues you're going to explore in this lab. There's a couple activities that you're going to do as part of this lab. The first thing is that before you go to the lab meeting itself, I want you to have a listen to an interview that was done on CBC Radio a few months ago, in which a spokesperson for the Enbridge Corporation lays out the reasons why the direction of flow within Line 9 needs to be reversed. It's a pretty good audio clip, and it lasts for about 30 minutes, and it gives a good overview of what the company's trying to achieve. When you get to your lab meeting, your lab instructor is going to show you a couple videos. One of these is a news account of the oil spill that went into the Kalamazoo River in 2010, the one that I referred to earlier in this video. The other thing that you're going to watch is a very short update, news update from Montreal about the Line 9 controversy itself. As I'm talking to you right now, where the case stands is that both sides, the Enbridge Corporation itself and people who are opposed to the reversal of Line 9, have had a chance to make their positions known to the National Energy Board, which is a tribunal which has the final decision as to whether or not Enbridge is allowed to go ahead and do this. The National Energy Board has met, has heard these positions, and has yet to make a decision. There will probably be one forthcoming in January. So what you're going to do in your lab is you're going to try and reenact the National Energy Board hearings. The group in your lab section is going to be split up into two, and one of the two groups is going to take the position of Enbridge and its supporters, and is going to argue why the pipeline should be reversed in terms of its flow. The other half of the lab section is going to be responsible for giving the opposite opinion, reasons why the pipeline should not be reversed in terms of its flow. And then your lab instructor is going to play the role of the National Energy Board and make a decision. So if you read the instructions, you'll see it's sort of set up like a courtroom drama, but the point being is that your goal is to try and explore this issue and look at both sides of the story, and then your lab instructor will make a decision based on your arguments, and then after that you'll have a discussion to figure out where your own opinions lie with respect to the Line 9 reversal. After your lab meeting, what you're going to do is a written assignment, which asks you to do a couple of things. The first is to do a little bit of research about Line 9 and to identify all the different positions and all the different stakeholders that may be involved in the controversy. Obviously, there will be governments, there will be energy and pipeline companies, there will be other private sector interests perhaps, there may be First Nations, there will be people who are landowners along the rights of way of this pipeline, and environmental groups who may be generally concerned about the tar sands and about the movement of oil through pipelines, and maybe even people who are worried about the effects of possible spills. So the point being is that you're going to create a table in which you outline all the various stakeholders and all their interests. Then the second step of the exercise is to actually go through and think about it and give your own perspective on Line 9 and what you think is appropriate. There's also a few questions that ask you to consider various scenarios about, whether it matters if the oil that Line 9 transports is used here in Canada or whether it's exported overseas, and things like that. And at the end of that, what you have to do is combine your table and your written text into a PDF document and submit it via My Learning Space to your lab instructor. I hope you have a little bit of fun with this lab. It's a very real issue. It's a very important issue that's not going to go away, and it's going to be in the news for years to come. So I hope you find this a useful exercise, and I'll see you in class.